Traitors, mate, a lot of you. This is our country. You should be here standing with us. Get back.
July 29th, 2024, Southport, England, 3 girls were killed at a dance class. BB King, age 6, Elsie Stancombe, age 7, Alice Da Silva Aguirre, age 9, with an claim spread across social media that the attacker was a Muslim asylum seeker who had crossed the channel. It was shared millions of times. That claim was false. The attacker was born in Cardiff, Wales. He had lived in Britain since childhood, but by the time the truth came out, the riots had already started. Between the 30th of July and the 5th of August 2024, anti-immigration riots erupted in cities across England and Northern Ireland. Hotels housing asylum seekers were attacked, mosques were targeted, buildings were set on fire. Cities affected included Southport, Liverpool, Hartlepool, Leeds, Hull, Bristol, Manchester, Belfast, Rotherham, Sunderland, Birmingham, and dozens more. By the time order was restored, 1,840 people had been arrested, over 350 police officers were injured, courts ran 24-hour sittings to process the cases. It was the largest civil unrest in England since the 2011 London riots. Elon Musk posted 46 times during the riots, generating 808 million impressions. One post read, "Civil war is inevitable." The UK government described his posts as dangerous misinformation. But here's what the media often missed. The riots were not simply about one stabbing. They were the eruption of frustrations that had been building for years. People cited asylum seekers being housed in hotels at a cost of millions of pounds per day to taxpayers. Net migration hitting a record 944,000 in 2023, nearly 1 million people in a single year. Knife crime concentrated in cities with rapid demographic change. A grooming gang scandal covering Rotherham, Rochdale, Telford, and Oxford documented in official government inquiries. A housing crisis with 1.3 million households on social housing waiting lists, an NHS waiting list at a record 7.5 million people in 2024. Some of these concerns are legitimate policy debates. Others, like the claims about the Southport attacker, were outright lies. The problem is that when genuine grievances are ignored for long enough, misinformation fills the vacuum. A year later, on September the 13th, 2025, between 110,000 and 150,000 people marched through central London. Experts called it probably the largest far-right demonstration ever held in Britain. The crowd stretched from Big Ben, across the Thames, and around the corner beyond Waterloo Station. Nearly 1 kilometer of people. They carried English flags and Union Jacks. They chanted, "We want our country back." Arrested. Whether you agree with the protesters or not, understanding why they were there requires looking at the actual data. Let us start with the headline figure, net migration. That is the number of people arriving in the UK minus the number leaving every year. Between 2015 and 2019, net migration averaged around 2 to 44,000 per year. The Conservative government had pledged to reduce it to the tens of thousands. They never came close. In 2020, the pandemic pushed net migration down to just 93,000, the lowest in decades. Then came the spike. In 2021, net migration rose to 239,000. In 2022, it jumped to 606,000, driven by the Ukraine crisis, the Hong Kong British National Overseas Scheme, and a massive expansion of care worker visas. Then in 2023, net migration hit an all-time record of 944,000. Nearly 1 million more people arrived than left in a single year. To put that in perspective, that is roughly equivalent to the entire population of Birmingham arriving in 12 months. Since then, migration has fallen sharply. By June 2025, net migration had dropped to 204,000, back to pre-pandemic levels. The government's own Migration Advisory Committee confirmed there was no single cause. This spike was driven by deliberate policy decisions made under the Conservative government. So who exactly is coming to Britain? Of the 948,000 people who arrived in the year to December 2024, 81% were non-EU nationals, primarily from India, Nigeria, and Pakistan. 13% were from EU countries, and 6% were British nationals returning home. In terms of why they came, the largest single group were international students and their dependents, followed by health and care workers recruited to fill vacancies in the NHS and social care sector, then skilled workers on general work visas, followed by humanitarian arrivals, Ukrainians, and Hong Kong British national overseas holders. In family visas, around 76,000 per year. Asylum claims hit a record 109,000 in the year to March 2025, the highest ever recorded in British history. The government is legally required to house asylum seekers while their claims are processed. This costs taxpayers millions of pounds every single day. Now let us look at how Britain's demographic map has actually changed. The 2021 census gave us the most detailed picture yet. In 2001, around 4.9 million people living in the UK were born abroad. That was 8% of the population. By 2011, that figure had risen to 7.5 million, 13%. By 2021, 10 million people, or 16% of the population, were born outside the UK. By June 2023, a separate ONS estimate put the number of non-UK born residents in England and Wales alone at 11.4 million. That is 19% of the population. Now look at individual cities according to the 2021 census. In Leicester, the white British population is now 33.8%, a minority in their own city. In Slough, 34.5% white British. In London overall, 36.8%. In Luton, 44.6%. In Birmingham, 43.3%. These are not projections, these are not opinions. These are the official government census numbers. Whether you see this as cultural enrichment, demographic transformation, or simply change, the data is clear. These cities look fundamentally different to how they looked 30 years ago. Now, the most politically charged question, crime. And here, the data is more nuanced than either side of the debate likes to admit. Police recorded victim offences in England and Wales rose from around 4.2 million in 2015 to a peak of 6.3 million in 2022. But here's what the headlines often miss. Overall crime is now falling. The latest figures from the Home Office show around 4.5 million recorded offences in the year to March 2025. That is a 2% drop year on year and a significant fall from the 2022 peak. The crime survey for England and Wales, which measures crimes that are not reported to the police, shows around 9.3 million incidents in the most recent survey. No statistically significant change from the previous year. So overall crime is not rising, it is falling. But some specific crime types have risen sharply. Knife crime, concentrated in cities, remains a serious and unresolved challenge. And there is an important debate about whether the Home Office collects sufficient data on perpetrator nationality and immigration status. Sexual offenses deserve their own section because the trend here is distinctly different from overall crime. Police recorded sexual offenses in England and Wales have risen sharply over the past decade. In 2014 to 2015, around 88,000 offenses were recorded. By 2016 to 2017, that had risen to 121,000. By 2018 to 2019, 158,000. By 2022 to 2023, 179,000. And in the year to March 2025, police recorded 209,079 sexual offenses, an 11% increase year on year. Rape offenses specifically rose from around 16,000 in 2012 to 2013 to 71,027 in the year to December 2024. Now, two critical caveats from the ONS itself. First, much of the rise in police recorded figures reflects improved reporting and recording practices, not necessarily more crimes occurring. Over half of the 11% jump in 2025 was caused by new offenses being added under the Online Safety Act 2023, specifically sharing intimate images and sending photographs of genitals. Second, there is no official government data that breaks down sexual offense perpetrators by nationality or immigration status. What is fully documented, and was the subject of multiple government inquiries, is the grooming gang scandal in Rotherham, Rochdale, Telford, Oxford, and other towns. The J report, commissioned by the government, found systematic failures by police, social services, and prosecutors across multiple towns over many years. Over 1,400 children were abused in Rotherham alone. The report confirmed institutional cover-up and a failure to act partly driven by fear of being accused of racism. That is the documented factual story, and it is damning enough on its own, without exaggeration. The immigration debate in Britain now cuts across traditional political lines. Nigel Farage and Reform UK argue the pace of change is unsustainable. In the 2024 general election, Reform UK won nearly 5 million votes. The political landscape has fundamentally shifted. The Conservative government, which was in power from 2010 to 2024, promised to cut net migration to the tens of thousands. They never came close. And it was their own policy decisions, opening care worker visas, the graduate route, and humanitarian schemes that created the record spike of 2023. The Labour government elected in 2024 says it wants to reduce net migration, but has refused to set a numerical target. Economists largely argue that immigration has kept the NHS running, filled care homes, and contributed positively to the public finances. The Migration Advisory Committee estimates that the average skilled worker migrant has a net positive fiscal impact of $1,600, compared to $800 for the average UK-born adult. But economists also acknowledge real strain on housing, school places, and public services, particularly in areas that have seen the fastest demographic change. Communities in towns like Rotherham, Oldham, and Bradford have voiced genuine concerns about pace of integration, cultural friction, and pressure on local services. These concerns were too often dismissed by politicians as racism, which only deepened the anger. So where does this leave us? Britain has changed faster and more fundamentally than at any point in its modern history. In 1991, 1 in 10 people was born abroad. Today, nearly 1 in 5. Net migration hit a record of nearly 1 million in a single year, driven by government policy decisions that were never put to a public vote. Overall crime is falling, but sexual offenses are rising, and the grooming gang scandal represents one of the most serious institutional failures in modern British history. The political establishment of all parties failed to have an honest public conversation about immigration for decades, and nature abhors a vacuum. That vacuum was filled by misinformation, by far-right activists, and eventually by riots on the streets of English towns. Whether you believe Britain's transformation is a story of enrichment, of loss, or simply of change, one thing is undeniable. The people of Britain were never given a proper democratic debate about the scale and pace of this transformation. That conversation, however uncomfortable, is now unavoidable. All sources used in this video are listed in the description below. ONS, the Home Office, the UK Parliament Research Library, the Migration Advisory Committee, read them for yourself. Draw your own conclusions. If you found this video useful, subscribe for more data-driven coverage. No agenda, just the facts.